Hi, let me start adding people. Let's see, go live with. Trying to figure out this technology right now, and I'm waiting on my guests to join me. So, everybody, please be patient. This is the first time I've gone live on Instagram. Just waiting on my guests to join me. There we go. Hello. There we go. Now we can do this. There we are, Jeff.
Hello. How's it going?
We figured out the technology. I'm pretty excited.
We got the technology going.
Yeah, let's say hello to everybody that's watching. Looks like it might just be you and I right this second, but uh, thank you for everyone joining us on Fossil Fuel Fridays. Thank you, Kimberly Smith and Talk Texas Oil Media Group, for allowing Jeff and I to discuss today's topics and issues that face. We're going to focus on the oil and gas industry, and Jeff Berkowitz is with us today, and he is the CEO of Delve in Washington, D.C., who are, I love what Politico said about you, Jeff. You're an opposition research and policy ace. So I'd be honored to tell me a little bit more about yourself and the work that Delve is doing.
Sure. Thank you. Usually when Politico is saying something nice, it's because they're about to say something much meaner. So we're a competitive intelligence firm. We help companies and industries navigate political and reputational risks, which are more and more abundant these days in more industries. But our largest practice is energy, both traditional fossil fuel as well as their new compatriots in utility scale renewable energy that now get to learn how hard it is to get through all the environmental objections to build a project and help fuel the country.
I love it. Well, one of the reasons we're very excited to have you on is because of your work at Delve. one of your latest articles you published on June 2nd with trends in energy and the mid-year update. Very interesting, and I love your attention to everything that's impacting our industry right now, and the ability to bring affordable, reliable, abundant energy to the entire planet, really. So tell me a little bit, and everybody please go and check out the website for Delve, and if you need people that know how to do the research for you and find the information that backs up you need, go to Delve. So tell me a little bit more about the trends in energy public that you just published.
Yeah, so this was an update from the beginning of the year, obviously before COVID-19 and all the other crazy things going on in the country right now happened. We looked out at the landscape based on, our team is looking at what's going on in the industry every day, and we identified a series of trends, and in this mid-year update we wanted to start taking a look at how those fared through the pandemic and social unrest and all the rest of it, and what does it mean for the industry as it tries to recover from the collapse in demand and price cuts and everything else. I think one of the big takeaways is really how much the more things change, the more things stay the same. A lot of these challenges, environmental activists that make it harder and harder to get projects built and bring energy to those who need it, have not relented at all in the course of the pandemic. They found very creative ways to keep targeting their efforts, and more we're seeing them really strategically target those in traditionally fossil fuel friendly areas of the country, Louisiana, Texas, and elsewhere.
Oklahoma.
What's up?
Oklahoma.
So it's becoming a much more strategically targeted thing rather than sort of, traditionally it's been local, maybe in more NIMBY type efforts. And I think that, that has real implications because, it used to be if you were building a pipeline out of the Permian, it was smooth sailing, and that's not the reality anymore. And if you're in the petrochemical industry in Louisiana, which is important for not only the broader economy, but even just addressing some of the key needs for personal protective equipment, hand sanitizer, disinfectants, and all the rest of it that gets derived from petrochemical products, it's harder for you to operate. And so you have to think through that trend and what we're seeing and take some of the noise of the environmentalists more seriously than in the past.
And on that thread, you mentioned in your article that they are organizing locally, but they're being backed by groups that have a lot of money and deep pockets that are pushing agendas that aren't good for the country, and something we need to watch out for. Do you know some of those groups that are pushing and not listening to the energy industry and why we need fossil fuels so much right now?
Yeah, you've got sort of your traditional groups like NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council, Sierra Club. You have sort of newer groups like 350.org. What some of these longer, more established groups have is the legal expertise, the policy expertise, the regulatory expertise to come in and help those local activists, become very disruptive to permitting processes, city council discussions, and as well as state legislative fights. One of the big pushes in places like Louisiana, Texas, I believe Oklahoma's done this as well. I know some of the upper Midwest states have as well. Increased protection for critical infrastructure projects, it can be a huge public safety hazard for some of these groups to go in. The environmental groups will go in and try and turn off a pipeline or do other things that can be very dangerous. To mess with that kind of high pressure equipment, and cause more harm than the pipeline ever would. So a lot of legislatures have been looking to increase their legal ramifications of doing that. That's obviously upset the activists that want to be able to get away with these kinds of disruptive activities, without consequences.
What do you think? What do you think our industry is doing right and wrong in educating these environmental groups on the importance of fossil fuels and how we all use energy, and this is our best source in these times?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important lesson is a lot. There's two important lessons. One would be infrastructure companies, pipeline, gathering systems, those kinds of things that used to be very much in the background are now front and center as brands. And either you define your brand or the activists will for you. So I think thinking about energy and oil services companies, infrastructure, being proactive in making sure communities understand who they are, what they do, how they operate responsibly, safely, and sustainably. Those are all important things, because the second lesson is really you're never going to convince the environmentalists that they're there to shut you down. What you do need to do is make sure that they can't turn the local communities against you. You want to make sure that you maintain that social permission to operate, and that the community understands before they start hearing from the environmentalists who you are, what you're doing, why it's good for the community and the broader country, and how you're operating safely and responsibly. And really, I think we can, the industry obviously has to be much more adult about this. You have to acknowledge those trade-offs, right? Nothing's perfect. There's always going to be accidents. You can do everything you can to reduce them. There's going to be impact on the environment. How are you mitigating that? These are things the industry thinks about and takes seriously. The environmentalists, if you address concern one, they're just going to move to concern two. They're not there to have real discussions about solving problems. They're there to stop you from operating.
We can't wrap our heads around that. I mean, it's so foreign to most of our industry. The people that I know and love that work in our industry, it's our moral obligation to provide this energy to the world, and we know how important it is, and we want to find ways to do it, more efficiently and cheaper, and bring more abundant energy to everybody on the planet, so there's no energy poverty. There's energy for all. You and I discussed earlier today how the more energy we can create, the more opportunities for everyone around the world to put their heads together and come up with new ways to provide a better life, for everyone on the planet. I think oil and gas industry is always supports, the environmental causes, that as long as they're sound and say, hey, we want to make sure the earth is clean. We live here too. Yeah, we don't understand why we can't help educate everyone around the world as to why our industry is doing everything in its power to keep the lights on and still be environmentally efficient. You are up in DC, and you're seeing how they're tying issues to the COVID and energy, and how they're working very hard to tie the oil and gas industry to somehow being related to health concerns. What else?
Yeah, that's right. I think you're seeing, coming into this year, the press, a lot of folks in the mainstream press and on the left were really hoping to make this a climate change election, and to really try and make that the defining issue of debate. You have President Trump, who's declared we're going to have energy dominance, and he's put forward U.S. energy policy that that makes us the Saudi Arabia frack gas, and started getting rather than just the theoretical ability to export LNG, really started making that a reality and sending Rick Perry around to make deals, get more American gas to more places, which is a good thing because mostly it's displacing coal, or biomass or wood or other things that are nowhere near as clean burning. So it's a good thing for the environment in addition to being a good thing for the U.S. and global economy. I think you now and sort of you have the other side where they kind of there's a senior utility executive that likes to say you can't legislate physics, and right now among the Democratic Party there's a lot of people trying to prove him wrong. They just
as part of your as you delve into things. I love your company's name, Delve. As you delve into it, you expose just how much government overreaches into so many things, and focusing on oil and gas. I mean, you have firsthand knowledge of that.
That's right, and I think you now have so many different layers of government engaging in the process of with the energy industry, right? It's no longer just sort of what's FERC doing and Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, but it's all of these different boards and permitting bodies at the state and local level that are trying to insert themselves in these processes. And we've seen it for years in the Northeast, where most homes in the Northeast United States in New England use heating oil to heat their homes. It's dirty, and it's not a great way to heat the home. They can't get gas.
You have the Marcel right there. The most abundant source of natural gas right behind you.
Yeah, it's right there in Pennsylvania. We can it's crazy. It's like, why is there this pipeline going all the way down to the Gulf Coast from Marcellus? And you have the same thing with in the South where you have a lot of coal generated electricity, and they won't let them take the natural gas out of Marcellus and Utica to get to them either. That's been a huge fight. So you have an industry that has a bias towards engineering, which means you have a lot of rational thinkers, and unfortunately a lot of the other side is emotion. It's emotionally driven, and I think we've got to get better at explaining at that emotional level that if that there's no long-term solution that doesn't include fossil fuels. There are just certain things that it does really well that other forms of energy don't. And there's room for everyone in that mix, and that's the reality for a long time. And the industry continues to do things to make it cleaner and less environmentally impactful to extract fossil fuels and bring them to the market. But it's not enough just to do the right thing. You've got to make sure that people understand that. And connect at an emotional level with why you're doing it and what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think over and over again, energy poverty always rings really big in my heart. I mean, I mean, God has blessed me so much, and the people that I know, and our industry is capable of giving everybody that I can think of around the world that doesn't have what we have here. And I mean, that's why so many people want to come to the United States, because I think it's because of our level of energy that we can use. We can turn on the spigot. I can turn on my lights in my house, or I can have a nice, cool air conditioning house in the summer. I mean, we're blessed here. And with with our capabilities to deliver fuels around the world, there's it's always something that I want to talk to every person that's against our industry over and over again and say, hey, how can I help you understand the pipelines that we put, out to every, place on our borders? We can turn that into LNG. We can deliver it in tankers now across the sea, and they can have access to, clean, reliable, abundant energy as well.
That's right. And it's amazing what that does. You can do a pretty clear overlay of where you have impoverished areas around the globe with where they don't have reliable, resilient, consistent electricity. So bringing that electricity to those markets in a way that is constant and can operate regardless of weather conditions and everything else is crucial to lifting more people out of poverty around the globe.
We also talked about some of the things our industry is facing is just investment and the dollars from people that we need to go out and drill for more energy. I mean, I know we've had the downturn, and Russia and the Middle East turned on the spigots, and it kind of hit the oil prices. But we're all going to go back to eventually going exploring for our fuel here. But how do we educate the people coming out of the Ivy League schools that are on the East and West Coast with all the money, but may not live in Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana? They don't really know. I mean, we've all heard the drilling rigs are called fracking machines, stuff like that. We just, how do we reach the people that are coming out of the liberal colleges and need to understand why their dollars are going to go and their investments are going to be returned, and they're going to make a lot of money, but it's going to.
Right. So I would say, Energy Infrastructure Council here in Washington has been putting out some great ads lately to really highlight, they're great because they've got the folks that build it and operate it and the folks that fund it and finance it. So it's a great collaboration, and they've been putting out some great ads that help, they've got one ad with a woman who, family immigrated from India, and she talks about how excited she is to be an energy investor because of what it does to return back to her homeland and make it a better place. And I've seen it resonate, with folks, and it kind of connects to that deeper level. I think to reach, you're going to have to undo a lot of indoctrination from the generations coming up that what they've been told about fossil fuels isn't the full reality. They've been told it's dirty and we're in a climate crisis and we have to stop using fossil fuels. But then they're all on their iPhones, which have a number of petrochemical products in them, and they're all it's like once you kind of show you have no idea how many things are in your life every day that you need, and particularly now at when we're in global pandemic, personal protection equipment, hand sanitizer, all of these things require fossil fuels, and bringing those things to market, and they're just qualities of these these different materials that you can't get elsewhere. Single-use plastics and all the rest of it, you can't just, there are implications if you try and take that out of the economy, not just for jobs in the industry, but for the broader health and safety of the population.
I love how you're so right about how everything is touched by the oil and gas industry. You and I spoke briefly on Tesla might come to Oklahoma. I mean, and everybody, there's so many people in oil and gas that are so excited about this because we're able to tell everyone just how much oil and gas is in a Tesla. And like you said, say it again, when you ask.
I always ask Tesla owners if their car is coal powered or gas powered.
Right.
It's always very confusing to them, but it speaks to a broader challenge that the industry has, which is people don't understand the fundamentals when they plug something in or flip that light switch. what makes it reliably turn on.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Tell me some other things that are good. So who's some other groups there in Washington that are helping get the message out about I mean, we have the Petroleum Alliance here in Oklahoma that works, with our own state government. Texas has, a couple. Who else do you hear about in Washington that's putting out the right message?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of, whether it's, American Petroleum Institute or American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, they've been doing some great work around highlighting the PPE and the hand sanitizer and all the rest of that. I think the missing piece, the challenge that all of those folks in Washington faces, the environmentalists are treated as sort of grassroots speaking from the community, and they're sort of treated as representing the big rich oil companies, right? I think what's missing is folks like you and other folks around the grassroots that can tell that story of the oil industry is made up of people too, and when you talk about, well, let's just let oil go to zero and bankrupt all the oil companies and take them over, like, well, you're talking about, the livelihoods of, millions of people, not just fancy rich executives. And I think that's lost right now. And I think that's the voice that is most important and urgent.
Urgent, and also they just need to look around and see what that affects. I mean, if I can't take a customer to lunch, I'm not going to be able to pay that restaurant, and they're not going to be able to pay their employees, and the guys that need the, oh man, there's just so much. It goes on and on. Every thread I think of, just this industry either impacts those issues or everything else impacts our industry. It's all tied together now. We've built up our country on oil and gas, and luckily we've been able to do that because it's provided us an amazing life and a freer country with more liberty than any place else in the world.
That's right. And the demand is there for the industry. It's interesting, as devastating as the job losses last few months have been for the oil and gas industry. You've seen 6 times as many of these green jobs that we're supposed to all transition to go away. So that tells me that industry hasn't found its stability yet. And we can't rely on an unstable industry for basically life itself when it comes down to having electricity and the ability to fuel our lives.
Kimberly gave us some neat questions, because you've actually been at a protest that turned into a riot, and
More than a few.
Can't even imagine. I mean, luckily I've never been in a situation like that. I've always felt pretty safe everywhere I've gone, and I can't even imagine. So tell us a little bit about what that's like, going to a protest and seeing it firsthand, just to see, what there may be. I mean, I'm sure you probably went there to discuss with people their issues, and then it turned into something else.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. We often get pulled into situations where there's a lot of disruptive activism. We had team on the ground at Dakota Access Pipeline protests. We've been at others. It's very it's really a challenge, I think, regardless of the type of protests, whether it's civil unrest or it's in response to an infrastructure project or anything. There's always folks that show up there with an intent to do harm. May not be the majority, but there's always people in there, and it's very easy once you kind of get crowd going to for it to get out of hand. And so one of the things that's always impressed me is in the situations I've been in, is including when we were on the ground for Dakota Access Pipeline protests, we were actually there in support of the law enforcement folks. The sheriffs were completely, when you have 10,000 out-of-state protesters showing up in a small county in North Dakota, that department doesn't have the sheriff's department doesn't have the resources. So they were relying on other folks coming in and helping. and we were helping them navigate some of the challenges around that and understand who they were up against. And I was incredibly impressed with the restraint that the officers showed. They had guns pulled on them, knives. They had the protesters had drones. They were trying to fly into police helicopters to knock them out of the sky. It's a situation that can easily get out of hand from either side. So I was glad that nobody really ever got truly hurt on either side at Dakota Access Pipeline protests. But I think now we're seeing around the country, activism today has really become something that has a professionalized and strategic element to it. And it's a real challenge. There's always going to be people who are emotionally responding to something in their community and coming out to express that. But there are other people that show up to utilize those inciting events to drive their own agenda, and that's where everyone from the media to companies to local communities have to be very careful and thoughtful about their response and how they react to the messages that they hear in these rallies, because hot emotional moments usually aren't where you make the best policy.
No, and nor are you going to be able to educate the people on the other side of your issue to possibly find a middle ground. I mean, I've had some people remind me pretty often. I'm pretty passionate about oil and gas, and there's been times where I've rather bash someone over their beliefs versus saying, hey, you know what, I think what you feel is valid, and I'd like to talk to you about the other side of your issue, and maybe give you some information that you might take away and look at and think differently in the future about oil and gas.
Yeah, I think you get a lot more from those kinds of real discussion and meaningful discussions where folks are listening to each other. I think you look back at when there was the Charleston shooting in the African American church. Governor Haley, Senator Scott, the community leaders, they came together and had real conversations about how to have a better result moving forward from that. And I think that was much more productive than what we've seen recently.
What do you think is going to happen in this upcoming election? Who are the obviously everybody's focused on the presidential election and both sides of that, but there's also a lot of seats in that need to be filled, hopefully, by people that understand energy. What do you think these elections? How are these elections going to impact the oil and gas industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge amount at stake for the oil and gas industry in this election. Probably more. It's always cliche to say this election is the most important one in our life. We say it every 4 years or 2 years to try and get people to turn out to vote. But I really do think we're at a really existential moment for the industry, because there's a very clear divide between the two parties on this issue. Joe Biden is one of two Democratic presidential candidates, the other being Bernie Sanders, to say that he intends to literally jail oil and gas executives for engaging in lawful business if he's elected. While I don't know that he will try and go that far, you already see it with the state attorney generals. Minnesota just did it. DC's done it. Others have done it earlier, suing the oil and gas industry and even its association, and trying to hold them responsible for climate change and some of these other things. I think you are going to go from having a very fossil fuel friendly administration in Donald Trump to Joe Biden, where even if he is a moderate, even if he's trying to appeal to Rust Belt voters that care about some of these issues, the reality is that everyone he's surrounding himself with is a climate change dream team. They are going to come in. They're going. Pipelines aren't going to get built. Infrastructure is going to get. Sorry.
I do it all the time.
Infrastructure is going to be harder to build. I think you're going to see a lot of federal support for the. Oh, okay. We're holding the the stand is not cooperating anymore. You're going to see investigations and more hearings in Congress. To sort of show trials for executives. You're going to see, I think you have the potential for oil and gas to become treated a lot like the tobacco industry. And it's a very dangerous moment because what we've seen over the last 3 years with Donald Trump is the reaction at the state and local level has been for elected officials to kind of try and counteract his pro-energy policies. If they now have a federal administration supporting them, I mean, we saw it at Dakota Access protests. The Obama administration wouldn't remove protesters from federal lands. They wouldn't send federal law enforcement to enforce the laws on those lands, and they overruled the career civil servants at the Army Corps of Engineers to reject the project and to ignore the results of the environmental impact study. So I think you're going to see a return to that plus a lot more. There is going to be, because you now have a generation of very disruptive activists that it's never going to be enough. I mean, they'll go and stage a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office. She's not far enough to the left for them on these things, and that pressure you're seeing that happen. The Democratic Party, incumbents that have been reasonable are getting thrown out and replaced with more radical folks. I wish this was a bipartisan issue, and it used to be. You used to have Democrats that were from fossil fuel friendly states and knew the importance of energy production, and you could work with. I think that's changing in a significant and rapid way. Yeah, I wish I had better news.
It's scary. I mean, it's scary for everyone that enjoys the life that they have right now. I just it just feels, again, I've said it feels like a moral obligation to produce the most amount of energy we can possibly produce. And again, like you said, every energy is welcome and on the table. If you're against oil and gas, I mean, join us. Get into the industry. Find help, because oil and gas is not going away in the foreseeable future. It's desperately needed. All these side things that are going on with it are just making it more difficult to produce, instead of saying, hey, why don't we find common ground and find better ways to produce it, more efficient, more environmentally friendly. But it's still, our energy still needs to be produced. And if you're on the other side, maybe think about joining in the oil and gas industry and helping us, instead of fighting against having the things we love and work so hard for here in America.
That's right. I can't agree more. I think there's no problem that we have with the environmental impact of the industry that can't be solved by the industry. You have some of the smartest engineers in the world, and they're tackling these issues. I think some of the companies do some good work putting that word out, but I think more has got to be done, in that regard, because that's what's going to solve this. Every single time we've encountered an environmental movement crying out that the end is nigh, it's been technology and innovation that has proven that they're wrong.
Yeah, the world's not coming into the end anytime ever soon. I mean, the alarmists on the other side, I mean, they just stir that media over and over. And this is why I love this networking and coming together with, great minds like your own, that we can find each other in this sea of, mayhem on the news, I mean, it's sad, but it seems like most news media outlets are pushing an agenda that I'm very uncomfortable with, especially toward our oil and gas, industry. You have anything coming up that you want to talk about? We need to be looking out for.
So we have the second half of our trends report next month. This last one looked at some of those broad issues around the election, and as well as some of the, we didn't really even get into some of the natural gas bans and utility issues around the country. That's a whole different topic here. But next month, we're going to look more at helping folks understand who are those disruptive activists, and how's the current environment giving them an opportunity at the local level and state level to really make life complicated if the industry get ahead of it. So that's what we've got coming up. I wish we had a more positive. We had more positive.
Great.
We're in the risk business.
No, it's fantastic information, Jeff, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to educate people and give all the information you're researching. Just want to remind everybody, Jeff Berkowitz is the CEO of Delve in Washington D.C., and they are just diving into issues and everything that they can find on how to make us, give us a better world. If you need information, please go to their website and find out, all the things they can research for your company, industry. I mean, there's no topics that it seems like you guys don't have the ability to go out and find out information for people.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and enjoyed the discussion, and look forward to continuing it.
Oh, hey, Jeff, anytime you want to hop on live and talk to people, you just call me. I'm a big fan of yours already.
All right. Sounds good. Stay strong out there.
Yes. And you be safe and enjoy the 4th of July. God bless the USA.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.